Welcome to the Maritime Executives podcast series, In the Know. I'm Tony Munoz, Editor-in-Chief. Our Executive Corner podcast will provide conversations with top executives concerning events and issues that are shaping our industry today. We will also bring you up to speed with the latest news and editorials covered by the Maritime Executive.
Welcome to the Maritime Executives podcast series, In the Know. I'm Paul Benecki. I'm joined today by Henrik Hyldahn, the Group CEO at Marcura, the best-selling AI-enabled platform for helping shipping companies manage voyage spend, vessel OpEx, and crew payments. To start off, it would be great if you could tell us a bit about yourself and about Marcura.
First of all, Paul, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm Henrik, born, raised in Denmark, come from the small village side of things, and maybe also, out of that one, a natural interest for, the bigger world. So come into computers quite early and did the engineering side of things, and then on to fast-moving consumer goods nearly as far as possible away from the maritime space, maybe with the exception of that with Coca-Cola and Carlsberg, that's something that is still beverages that I guess that most of the people in the industry know is quite familiar with. But somehow I felt that after I've been with Carlsberg and Coca-Cola in various roles, I've always considered myself as a Luxus trainee there, being involved in production, coming from the production engineering background, being involved in logistics, being involved in sales, being involved in marketing, and externally and internally finance. Then things was just getting bigger and bigger. But the need and the courage for, using technology to drive business result was somehow harnessed, and that's what I basically built on ever since. And then I was so lucky that there was a Norwegian ship owner that reached out from consultancy and asked, Henrik, would you consider something like this? I think you should have a go. It's a quite inspiring people. And for that reason, I think you should give it a go. And came in, there was a guy sitting in front of me saying, Henrik, I know everything about running vessels and capital streams for them, but I don't know enough about how do we apply technology and how do we utilize this one both at scale more than anything else. And that was basically my intro to the Hyldahn group. Came in and where I then was so lucky to be part of both the commercial side, the technical management, and the supplier side, and so forth. And long story long, then a lot of other things have happened in the industry, being part of the logistics business for a number of years, but being around, and then you actually get fascinated about the maritime industry, right? Because it's so sticky, so that you're never gonna get in, or first you're coming in, then you're part of it, and maybe because the same thing still. It's like you can solve one problem and you can see a difference on the things you're making. And you can see a difference on scale because everything is global by nature. So that global nature have taken me around the world with number of different opportunities as a supplier on the commercial side within logistics and so forth, and both as a founder and then I ended up in Shipser, which is procurement spend and the big procurement platform within Maritime. I was lucky to take a very strong product and hopefully make it stronger. At least that we have been lucky to give a good uptick on that part. And where Shipser was then part of the Marcura group in 23, acquired by Marcura. And why did I end up also on Marcura for Shipser? I thought it was fantastic. You have this company, this big Marcura group that is super strong on anything to do with the voyages and the port cost. And then you have the whole vessel OpEx side of things, which is the procurement side. And I thought that's competitive, but you're still having the same backbone and everything is actually complementary. And you get good people, strong people in, and you have strong systems. So it was quite a no-brainer, actually, so whenever the opportunity was to join the Marcura part of it. And then I was lucky that the timing was right. It's that the CEO of Marcura thought it was time, maybe to have a little bit more technology kind of profile towards Marcura. And for that reason, it fits very nicely with the a change on the CEO post. And for that reason, I've been exceptional lucky to run now. I've been a hell of an exceptional business built by exceptional people, and and even more exceptional customer base. So for that, I'm lucky.
Well, great. Fantastic. That's a very thorough overview. So would you mind walking us through a little bit about Marcura's history too, how the company has evolved over time and how it came up to the merger with ShipServe?
Thanks. I think first of all, acknowledging that what is shipping? It's probably one of the most decision-heavy industries on earth, right? And at the same time, so I'm also obliged to a lot of the compliance side of things. But it is also a business or an industry where there is a lot of steps and a lot of handoff between parties, either internally or externally. Because in shipping, you have a number of smaller parts because of just the sheer size and also the geographical complexities and the handoff also from the on the actual decision making. So why Marcura on that part is like they were strong on starting with the voyage for everything which is about to moving the cargo, settling the port cost and so forth, all the ones for the charter and the traders and the operators of the world, right? And ShipServe was strong on the vessel side and keeping it operational, managing the spend, so every cost matters and so forth. And I think that the founders at the start, it's actually quite impressive. If you go 25 years back and look at the strategic, rationale for starting Marcura, it has two choices. Either you went for the voyage side of the cost, which is very focused on port cost at that time, or you went on the vessel OPEX side. So that was always the plan. And, Marcura's just started out with DA disk and starting this one with the port cost and getting into that domain, and then evolved from, out of the costing and the settlement of the documents into more adjacent services, data services, and so forth. And ShipServe actually by nature just talked about this procurement, but fundamentally it is all the vessel OPEX, right? That you are actually trying to control and spend in that context. So it's two businesses that work aside each other, and it's taking a lot of years in this industry to build the network, build it client by client, build it by one partner integration for another. To 25 years later, you have actually solved a lot of the complexities between the parties. You have removed a lot of the manual handovers and so forth. And you have also eliminated the need for going to a lot of other systems because you can contain kind of the things in one box.
Sure.
Okay. So I think this is a problem we're trying to solve.
Yeah. And it makes sense, right, that there's one platform that your staff can go to do all of the functions that they have to do to manage voyage spend and vessel OpEx, right? That's so much for the ship owner, right? That they don't have to log into platform A, platform B, platform C. They can go to you, and it takes care of so much of their workflow, right?
To expand on that one, because you're absolutely right. That was the thought process. You start solving one problem, right? You start trying to solving the actual document, which started with the trucking the paper towards UAE in order just to get it into the system. Then you figure out, okay, now you can also vet the different counterparties that is part of that transaction, and saying, okay, if you can do this part, then it actually also makes sense in order not to go to a separate system and a separate parties. You can also perform the payments. So this is how it actually went from DA disk to claims handling to Martros being involved in it and to ShipServe. And that's a recipe that we of course also trying to replicate to other areas going forward. I'm sorry for cutting it off.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you for the explanation. So how is AI changing the nature of the business, the day-to-day functions? How is it speeding things up or automating things or making it generally easier for owners to work?
I think first to acknowledge that the jobs have not changed, right? We're still doing transport of goods and cargo from A to B. We are being more refined in how much of the information and the predictions and so forth. So ships still get chartered, ports still get called, cargo is loaded in the same ways as it's been done. You're doing more automation and you want to do more prediction, but I think this is fundamentally the same. I think what really is changing is that there is an entire generation of expertise where it has been the learning system has been you learn on the job, you learn through being together with experts that is then passed on to the next generation as a workforce. And for that reason, then you learn, the physical world and get it in. I think those are not necessarily the similar ways. Whenever you want to optimize things going forward, you need to change that part, and AI is really allowing us to change that part. So, we know more what is the individual knowledge is somehow, starting to become, let's call it institutional knowledge, with the lack of a better word, right? That you take, instead of having it for the individual, you build it into systems. You capture the knowledge from one company, and then that add the one into a system. So it's more institutional knowledge. And I think that's actually a savior, because otherwise a lot of that knowledge will have walked out of the door.
Great. I mean, that makes so much sense, right? That you can provide a platform that new entrants to the industry want to use and feel comfortable using. And at the same time, also take the best of the previous generation's experience and wrap it into operations going forward. That you can do both of those things is very powerful, and I'm sure very valuable to business. So at present, we hear a lot about AI implementation and owners looking to use it and looking for ways to use it effectively. Are you seeing your shipping customers actively looking for ways to integrate AI into their business operations? This has become common in shoreside industries.
I think actually, we are well past, do we need AI? I think it's actually more the other way around now, where people is more afraid of missing out on AI. And I think that there is a genuine need for them. Means, what is AI? Okay, and I think that it's more, there's a shift going on right now, that it's more from one single prompt and, being able to do one simple thing, to more creating system of agents and intersystemic knowledge, so you actually can use it on a larger scale. And maybe simply said, moving it from one person to more an organizational wide kind of opportunity with AI. That's definitely one thing that is happening right now. To run entire workflows and closes the loop and so forth across an organization. So I think that's a big shift right now. And you could say that the examples are real. One of the things, just to take some practical things here, is like we have done the voyage handover from chartering to operation and vice versa, right? It's like what used to take hours of manual work, because you are 24/7 kind of industry right now. We can actually draft that one in less than a minute, right? And we can still counterplate and create not only a mail anymore that comes in the morning and saying this is the handover. Now it's also included with the embedded links and getting deep insight if you want to do it, right? So the whole thing about getting an overview in the industry, getting closer to whatever's going on, that's definitely better than anywhere before. Contract risk is another one. It's like why would you entertain and go into a bad deal? In the old days, you start spending the first 2 years of your training, right, just to lead and read through the charter parties to identify the clauses where were things going wrong and so forth. And it's good. But actually AI reads the charter parties, looking for clauses and exposes the operator for ambiguous language or missing things, much faster. And I think this is a good example. So we had one client of ours that got $120,000 kind of exposure minimized in a contract just last week. And it took him less than a minute. And that's definitely worth a saving. And this is a good example of where AI stands out more than ever before.
That's great. That's really, really impressive, right? And that could have probably slipped through a manual review in the past, right? If somebody maybe wasn't 100% attentive to that particular clause, maybe they would have missed it. But it sounds like AI can provide consistency in those reviews, and not just speed, but it's going to perform about the same way every time. Is that about right?
100%. And it is very much about how do you create the right circumstances for it to give you also and assist you, right? So the way that we are really trying to do it is we are trying to build the data semantics. This is something that we have done over many years, right? That we are trying to say, okay, if you want to go in and read port cost as an example, it can be one of those 15,000 items to classify and break them down. If it's one procurement, you can be one of those codes on one of those structures in order to give some meaningful answers. If you're going to go to this and this port, this is a kind of the breakdown and the things you need to consider. If you're going to go and so on, right? And then you go extend this one into, okay, it's not only on client level or country level, it's not even on port level, it is on the terminal level, and okay, it's actually on what part of it on the terminals and so forth. So you always refine it, and you do that one because the whole thing is that you want to protect your clients as much as possible in a way where I would say that the ones that controls the uncertainty best in shipping is the one that actually will come out as winners. And that's quite an interesting thought. In the old days, it was only volume, and so forth, right? And now today, it's not necessarily only about getting more volume, but it is about how do you control the uncertainty better than anybody else. That's risk, getting access to the right data. It's getting to the right exposure, in terms of whenever you're moving yourself forward. And on spend, the first spend you can do is, do you need it? Why do you need it? Where do you need it? And what is the opportunities that you're having? So it's that whole thought process that you try to go through for anything. And this is where AI is getting stronger, because no longer a dashboard sitting somewhere whenever this event has taken place. It's now embedded into the process so you can action upon it instead of an afterthought.
Sure. And, in shipping, as you say, uncertainty is key. Surprises are generally expensive. If you have to do something that you haven't planned for same day or adapt to a circumstance that you hadn't anticipated, that usually increases logistics costs, increases all kinds of costs. So it makes a lot of sense that managing uncertainty would be very valuable for your customers.
And I think this is just a story. I think this is a good example. So the big difference between shipping and other places is it's like it is really, really difficult to rectify a wrong decision. You could say popularity is the ship has sailed, right? So if you're getting the wrong goods delivered, or if you did not have the agreement in place, then it might be that it's fantastic that you have had an AI that gave you an answer, but you need to have the answer. And I think there's a massive difference. I guess we're going to come into this one a bit later, but there is something about that part which is maybe more important than whenever you see the hype and you see that you can do everything and you can ask Claude or you can ask anybody about, give me an answer for this and this, right? And that's fine. There will be an answer, but it is the answer. And also, for that reason, is it trained on the right data? Is it having the right guardrails? Does it understand the context of shipping? Are you ready to, is it loaded with your profile to actually match the things that you want to get out of it? So it's all those parts, which is going to be more and more important as I see we're moving forward.
Sure. And if I might make a parallel, we see this in law too, in the legal system here in the US, where lawyers attempt to use a general purpose AI, so ChatGPT, Claude, what have you, to write their filings. And it will hallucinate. It will come up with, references to cases that never occurred. And they'll provide that to the court, and the judge will have a close look at it, and they'll say, wait a second, this precedent is not real. And if you attempt to use, just general purpose off the shelf AI for difficult technical tasks of any kind, I'm sure the same thing applies in shipping, right? That we have a lot of very sophisticated internal domain knowledge that ChatGPT isn't going to know anything about. So I'm sure there's a fair amount of risk there for folks who think that they can just pull the tool right out of the general purpose toolbox and apply it to their challenges.
100%. Yeah.
So I did also want to ask you about other risks to do with AI as well. Do you see other implementation risks besides the hallucination, the lack of background knowledge for general purpose AIs, or are there other issues that owners and operators need to keep in mind?
I think you just based upon point, you can say that the translate what you said a bit is that I think you need to accept that AI is not about taking decisions away from anybody that is an operator within the industry. Because it will give them this. You will. It is more about giving them the space and the intelligence to make the decision that actually matters. So somehow that they can take that decision with confidence. Um, but the bar is genuinely higher than in most industries, and 90% accuracy is not good enough when the wrong answer costs real money and has that's cascading impact, as I mentioned before, right? So if you're lining up and you haven't had the handover, and then it's not say, oh yeah, but my AI told you that one. No, 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 it doesn't work. You need to have. So I think there is a really specific risk on that part. And I think whenever we are, what we really try to mitigate on that part is still to have AI and then having our own specialist, that is actually an integrated part of the learning system, being part of the checking of that we're getting to the outcome. Because remember, it's not about giving you a result, it's actually getting the job done. That is the key for this part here. So what we are using it for is a lot of the manual work and the things that used to take time. So we are more focusing on the exceptions that the model maybe cannot handle. And then trying to build in learning systems so that the things that it could not handle this time, it will actually compound and correct for the next time, so that the model's getting smarter and smarter and for everybody that uses, right? But we don't want to take anything away. We want to be what really have made both the company, but also more importantly, our clients to be successful clients. This is actually that they are the one that sharpen the knife. They are the one that takes the decision. They are the one we will just help to distill that complexity around the world, for them to actually take a better decision and position themselves correct according to the risks that they are looking at. So every decision your team makes, every exception resolved, every claim settled, every knowledge that stays within the system. But that also means that the next person that is actually handling and is in for the same comparable situation starts from a higher base. So maybe back to the attention span for the youngsters. That also means that you actually don't need necessarily 10 years going forward in order to get into the industry. You can come in and be more productive earlier, but you need to still, and this is an old guy talking here, you still need to have the respect for the experience. You need to have the respect for that this is real money and it's real decision that is being made, but you can definitely go in faster than what you have, because the knowledge really compounds and creating that learning loop, not just to be accurate, but generally better over time. Right?
Yeah, that's great. And I'm sure for managing generational change too, that's very, very valuable for your customers. So you touched on this a little bit, but I wondered if you might be able to delve into detail a bit about how your team helps customers take advantage of the best of AI while managing these risks. And part of it is that you have a lot of training data. You've built models that make a lot of sense for shipping. But how do you maybe educate customers and help them along the way on the best ways to use it?
I think it's first and foremost being very, very close to the clients. What are they trying to achieve? And of course, we have the expertise also in helping them, but trying to portray, more than the client is, that's not written in any good Bible, that's for sure. So, you need to make sure that there is and very close. And then it's trying to look at whatever they're trying to do end to end, that trying to solve the big problem. And then the first thing you want to do and utilize AI for is how do you eliminate as much as the work that is possible to get it completely away, automated, and gone, take it out. And if it is things that is not high value decisions for the clients. So this is something that we're trying to do. This is our secret sauce on tools and productivity, connectors, all kind of complexity that we have built over the time. So if they're focusing on the decision side of things, on what is really the core value levers for them, then we together utilize AI to flash up as much as possible. We have done that one a bit so far. We're going to do even more going forward in terms of being that proactive kind of input in terms of taking a decision, take the right decision before anything has been done.
That's a great overview. And I'm sure it really helps for folks who are getting into this now or still familiarizing themselves with it to be able to talk to a group of consultants, a group of advisors who are very familiar with it across the global shipping industry and how it can be applied profitably, right? Not just as an idea because it's what everybody's doing, but because there are specific use cases that make sense and can actually save you or earn you money.
think that the general thing is just that things that used to take weeks now take seconds. I
Yeah.
think that's the very, very short kind of part of it. So what I do think that is more like, I think whenever we think of AI, don't think of AI as one fix. Really think about, whenever we're talking about value, think of it in, I will nearly say, 4 pillars. First, what are you trying to achieve end to end? So not a task at a time, but the full workflow. Let's take an example from fixtures to settlement, from requisition to delivery, from contract to payment, and so forth, right? So specific things that you are trying to achieve. And then use AI to set the context. AI to describe what is the relationship with the various parts. Who could it be? How can it use? How can it translate the things that before was taking years of standardization and to actually bridge and utilize this one? So, as an example, every transaction you process, that could be the intelligence behind the next one. So, a port call in Singapore, a demurrage dispute in Rotterdam, accrued payments in Manila. It's all these things that then sharpens the next one. So you always have that kind of context. This is just 3 examples of it, right? And then whenever you are into AI and how it can help, it's just like anything else. It can get it wrong. It can make a big decision wrong, right? So, somehow you need to own the outcome, have the capability to validate what the system actually produces. Because me, whenever I search, you can go on the old doctor kind of advice on searching for things. You can go on, on specialized topics, and it will always give you the answer. So similar like what we've discussed before. But it's really, let the specialists do that one. And don't use it as a safety net, but as an integrated part of your workflow together with somebody that can validate it. For them. And then the fourth one, connected with the guardrails. There is tons of things that you can interpret in different ways and so forth. And that's anything on sanctions, that's emission policies and so forth. It's your own contract terms as an example. How is that going to be done? And our role is really on driving the value to ensure that you can execute faster and better without the risk of the hallucination on that one. Right? Because at the end of the day, it really comes back to how do you protect your margin? How do you account for the variables? How do you manage the risk?
Great.
And those fundamentals have not changed. That's for sure.
Well, thanks so much. I mean, it's really, really interesting to hear about how it can be applied in very specific ways, with very specific use cases, with very useful outcomes, right? I think we hear a lot of generic conversation about how AI could be great or, could save time, could save hours. But it sounds like with your experience across global shipping industry and specific business processes within it, that you've identified a bunch of ways that really work that you can share with clients, and also how to implement them, right? Not just the areas where it's useful, but the learned experiences for how to implement it so that it actually helps the business. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to add in closing?
Yeah, I think that there's a general theme, right, which is maritime professionals are definitely not short of software. I think there is more theme about they're short of intelligence that they can act upon. So every vendor in this space right now is leading with AI now, but it rather misses the point, right? The AI is the mechanism. What matters is what it's built on. And if we put ourselves one step higher, then I would usually say that the world runs on maritime. There's more than 90% of the sea trade, right? Maritime runs on decision. And Marcura has been inside those decisions for the last 25 years. So every transaction makes the next decision smarter, and you can apply the AI model to anything, and you can't replicate that part. So for me, this is very much about how do you really create that actionable kind of thing, and the focus about how do you go to actionable things faster and better.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. This has been really enlightening for me, and I look forward to hearing more about it as things unfold.
Thanks for having me. Good stuff. Thanks, Paul.
Catch
Cheers.
you next
Bye.
time.